Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, you're going to want to make sure you smash that subscribe button. Make sure you smash that notification button because you're not going to get the information anywhere else on the internet but here of the stuff that we're going to be talking about with my friend Keith. We're going to be dropping some knowledge on NLP, how to reprogram your brain, how to master your mind. Now, he's a best-selling author, keynote speaker. He does it all. He's the Swiss Army knife of mindset. Keith, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Thank you, John. I'm loving that Swiss Army knife of mindset. I might steal that. I love that. I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm so blessed to be able to hang out with you and talk to you today, because I love the subject of mindset. But before we even get started, because we all know that since COVID happened, a lot of things have changed. Businesses have changed. So what is your definition of resiliency?
Resiliency. Good question. And you're right. We've seen massive changes over the past couple of years with the global pandemic and the lockdowns and lots of forced change. A key thing, though, is what so many people tend not to realize is we're always changing. Change is constant. It's the only constant in life. It's change. I remember toward the end of the first round of lockdowns and so on, people say, "Oh, cool. When are things going to go back to normal?" That's the point. Normal is always changing. It's just usually it's small little steps. Here we had a massive change, but we never go back. We're always moving forwards. Things are always changing. Even ourselves, our bodies, our mind, everything is constantly changing. And to me, resiliency is the ability to keep up with those changes and to adapt to whatever these new changes bring us. That, yes, sometimes they'll bring benefits, sometimes they'll bring challenges, they'll bring problems. But when you've got resiliency, you're able to accept all of those and just handle them in your own way, moving forward with the change, keeping going and not getting. I won't say not getting knocked down, because we'll get knocked down from time to time, but with resiliency, you get knocked down, you get back up again. Yeah, maybe it hurts, maybe things have changed, but you keep going and you adapt so that you fit in with these new conditions rather than trying to be living life like it was 4 years ago when everybody else is living life like it is now.
Okay, so because on your side of the pond, a lot of things have changed over the last 5-6 years, including Brexit. And then, of course, we just lost the Queen. So you're talking about big changes and not only, dealing with COVID. So you guys have a lot of different changes. So how do people, on that side of the pond, how do they deal with, the change? Because a lot of people don't want to change until they're forced to change. Is it the same way there?
Yeah, I would say that's probably pretty much true for most people in most countries and probably in most cultures. We often do what we can to avoid change because change can be uncomfortable. We're going from situations that we know into a situation that's new and we don't know how to react. We don't know how to act in it, and it's often that fear of change that holds us back, and it's not, and that even holds us back in achieving things that we might want to achieve. I mean, somebody might want to leave their job and set up their own business, become an entrepreneur after doing the 9-to-5 for a long time, and they might really dream about that and really want to do that. And I've seen this happen with a lot of people here. I'm gonna take a wild stab in the dark and assume it's the same across the pond on your side as well. People, they want to do this, but never quite get around to doing it, because, and they'll often say, "Oh, I'm scared of making the change." But where the fear comes in with this change is that wherever we are, even though it might be a bit sucky, might be a bit unpleasant, at least we know how to deal with it. We know what's going to happen, and we know how to react. But when we make that change, when we leave the comfort of the job, even if we don't particularly like the job, we leave that comfort step out into this new world. It's exciting, but it's also like, oh my word, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Oh, I'm facing all new things. And that's kind of what holds us back. That said, as you said, we've had massive changes over the past few years. We've all had the pandemic, the lockdown. As you say, here we've had massive economic social upheaval with Brexit. And then, as you say, we lost the Queen last month. I believe it was worked out the majority of people in the UK had never known life without the Queen, because she's older than most of us. So that in itself, even though it's somebody who doesn't affect our day-to-day life, it's one of those concepts. She's someone who's always been there since before we were born. Just always there. It's all of a sudden, wow, gone. So we've had all of these changes kind of thrown upon us, which has really shaken things around, stirred things up a lot. So a lot of people are now facing change, even though they might want to resist change, might not want to change. We're having to change because everything has changed around, and people are adapting to that. Even things like there's a lot more working from home and a lot more hybrid working nowadays. I mean, I remember when growing up in when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, they were talking about how these newfangled computer things were going to revolutionize life. We're going to have so much more time when we'll be at home and talking to each other over computers and so on, working remotely. It never kind of happened. And then the pandemic kicked in, lockdown kicked in. All of a sudden, companies were going, oh, okay, well, yes, you can work from home now. It took that massive thing for us to suddenly go, okay, this technology's been around for about 15 years, we can use it. And that's made a big change. Now, some companies have gone back to, you've all got to come back into the office again because we're spending all this money on expensive buildings. Some companies, I mean, I know of one company who, over a year ago, they made the calculation that they went ahead, sold their building, they have everybody working from home, and every month they hire out a hotel for 2 days. They bring everybody to the hotel, have the staff meeting, all the meetings and so on, and then they have a party, basically, socializing for the evening and for the next day. And it's cheaper for them to do that than it was to keep the office building. Something they would never have thought of, but given changes were forced upon them, they had the resiliency to go, okay, this is how things are now. What can we do to make this work? How can we really make this work for us and for our employees as well? Because increasingly, employees are sort of going, you know what, I don't want to go back to how all that old stuff was. I don't want to spend an hour and a half commuting each way when I can work from home and get just as much stuff done and have 3 more hours of my life for me and my family.
Yeah. Okay. So now you said a word because I lost my vision 2 years ago, and I'm back to getting my vision back, but my hearing got a lot better. But listen for keywords. And before we even got on, we were talking about how I took a deep dive into mindset. Everybody knows about Napoleon Hill's, Think and Grow Rich, but who did he learn from? So I went back and read the autobiography of Mr. Dale Carnegie, and talking about mindset. And one thing you said is the word thought, because I believe, even in the book, it says think and grow rich, not work and grow rich, not hustle and grow rich. It's think and grow rich, because even in the Bible, I'm a Christian. I believe in the Bible that even anything, even whether good or bad, it starts in the mind. Whatever it is in your life, whether it's a good, a good outcome or a bad outcome, it all starts in the mind. It all starts with our thoughts. And a lot of us, I believe, if we can master the man or female in the mirror, we can master the world. So talk to us a little bit about what you do, where you came from, and how did you get into doing what you do?
Sure. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Thought is what kicks everything off. I mean, without thought, we don't then plan how to do things. We don't then do things. Everything that's happened is either because we've thought it or somebody else thought it. And we do kind of think things into existence. I don't mean we sort of sit down and think and all of a sudden the thing appears. It'd be cool if that happened. It'd also be quite disruptive, actually. But we think something. Oh, I would love to do X, Y, Z, or hey, I'd love to know where Napoleon Hill got his ideas from. That was your thought. And you then went and found out where he got them from, and then found out more about Dale Carnegie, etc. None of that would have happened if you hadn't had the thought, where did he get the ideas from? So yeah, thought is what triggers everything that we do. And what do? I help people. The way I say it is, I help people to create the freedom to be, do, and have what they most want. Usually, that's in the form of helping people get rid of fears or phobias, or conquer bad habits, unhelpful habits, overeating, smoking, not working out when they know they really want to, but they keep finding excuses not to, or even those mental blocks. I mean, we spoke earlier about the number of people who they're in a boring job. They would love to step out and be an entrepreneur, but I'd love to do that. But people like me, we could never succeed in something like that. I don't have what it takes. We can all develop what it takes to do the things we want to do, but so often we have these blocks in our mind holding us back, because it's things that we've learned in the past. We've either learned when we were growing up, or we've learned through experience in later parts of life. And I say we've learned, but so often we don't actually learn the right lessons, for want of a better word. I mean, as humans, we decide things have meanings. Something happens, we decide that it has a particular meaning. And that this is an evolutionary survival tool mechanism from way back when. We had to decide what things meant, and then decide whether it was a threat to us or not. And if it was a threat, get out of there before whatever it was came to eat us. We've evolved. We're now much higher up the food chain. We've got all these tools. We've got all the things we have in modern life. But the mind hasn't quite kind of evolved to catch up with that. So we still, in many respects, have the mind of the caveman, for whom the whole world is a threat. And we learn all these things by either observing others, or something happens to us, a painful lesson, and we decide that means something. I mean, for example, suppose we have a car crash. We decide, unconsciously, that means, cars are dangerous and I'm not going to get in one because I might have another crash. Which is an unhelpful lesson, because it's not what it meant. But we learn that thing, and our mind then kind of blocks that whole thing out. Goes, no, that's dangerous. We're not going to do that. Or we took a risk once with attempting to do something with business. We took a risk. It didn't pay off. We decide that means we're not geared up. We're not the kind of person who could make a success in business because we failed once. I mean, everybody fails. Everybody fails.
I want to talk about that real quick, because I was thinking of this earlier because I do my cardio, and I listen to an hour and a half on Audible, and I'm listening to Think and Grow Rich again. But one thing that got me thinking is that if you get 100 kids in a classroom and you ask them what you're going to be when you grow up, there's no limits.
Yeah.
They astronauts, president, king, queen. You never see him. Oh, I'm gonna. It's hardly ever see a kid say, you know what, I want to end up being a garbage man, or I want being in a cubicle somewhere. Yeah. But it's because we put limits on our children for their mindsets. Where if my kid says, I want to be a professional soccer player, okay, let's go for it. What do we got to do to get there? Instead of just saying, oh, you can't do that. Nobody in our family's ever done that. Right?
So true. So true. We kind of hold our kids back. Not only do we kind of shatter their dreams and so on, but we actually teach them to then shatter their own dreams repeatedly as they grow up. All these things really hold us back. You mentioned there about kids when they're young, what they dream of when they what they want to be when they grow up. When I was really young, when I was younger, so like early teens or whatever, there were three things I really wanted to be when I grew up. I either wanted to be a performer, a singer or an actor, or I wanted to be a hypnotist, because I was obsessed and fascinated with hypnosis at that time, or I wanted to be an author. And growing up, it's like, well, I could never achieve any of those things. I mean, I used to be incredibly painfully shy, so there was no way I could be a performer. Hypnosis, I had no idea where to find out about anything about that. Being an author, you've got to be really lucky for somebody to pick up your book. That's what we were always told. So all three of those went out the window. I then went to university, studied computer and microprocessor engineering, and ended up having a very successful career in IT, which is really different. But that kind of fitted. By that point, I'd kind of grown up thinking, I'm shy, I hate speaking, I'm terrified of speaking with strangers, I can't do anything where I've got to speak with lots of people. IT is brilliant for that, because you do it all behind a keyboard. So all those dreams had kind of got squashed, because people had told me you can't do those things. I told me that I couldn't do those things. I had my career in IT, got quite successful in the career, but in a career, the more you rise up, the more you reach the point where it's who you know rather than what you know that gets you in. And I'm not saying there's anything bad with that. I mean, obviously, if you're recruiting for somebody at a sufficiently high level, I was responsible for $1 million budgets. I had staff working in 3 continents for me, so I was looking after some high stuff for a company. For another company to go, we need somebody at this position, they're not going to just take random people. They're going to want to know that this is somebody they can trust. So it's through your connections that you get the higher up roles, and that's absolutely totally understandable. But I was so painfully shy, I couldn't go to seminars and workshops and connect with people, because I was just terrified of the thought of speaking with them. So my career kind of plateaued. And then one day I ended up going to a Christmas party with a group of people who I knew from the internet, but had never actually met in real life. And I thought, how hard can it be? I know them from talking behind the computer screen. It's going to be easy. We turned up there and found out exactly how hard it could be. It was walking into a room full of strangers, which at that point was probably my biggest fear. I ended up having a panic attack. I fled. And that was the point. I still remember it clearly. That was over a decade ago. I still remember clearly as I was fleeing the place, thinking, you can't go through life like this. You cannot go on like this anymore. What's life going to be like if you don't change? It's going to suck. And I ended up going on a personal development seminar. A friend pretty much dragged me along to a weekend personal development seminar. Very nearly didn't go to that because it was full of strangers, but my friend said, I'll be with you the whole way. You promise? Yeah, okay. Went to it, found it really interesting. Found it, I was already starting to make changes. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to learn all this stuff, use it to sort me out, and then progress my IT career. And it was one of those seminars where seminars free, and they make their money by selling you their courses and their trainings at the end of it. Well, it's fair enough. And I decided I was going to take it. So me being me, I signed up for the entire pack. I thought, if I'm going to go for it, I'm going to go all in. So I signed up to learn trainings in hypnosis, NLP, coaching, also how to become a speaker and even become a trainer of all of these things. Thinking, well, I'll learn the whole lot and then go back to IT. Went through it all, found I was really enjoying it. Reached the point where I was thinking, you know what, it would be lovely to do this as a career, but I got the high-paying IT job, I've got all the outgoings to go with it, I couldn't afford to take the pay cut and take the risk. More of that limiting self-belief, limiting self-talking, and people like me can't do that. What if all goes wrong? And then, magnificent stroke of luck, my position was made redundant. Basically, my boss called me into the office and said, here's a wheelbarrow full of cash, never come back. That was the point where I went, if ever I was looking for a sign, this is it. And so I moved full-time into coaching. That was back in 2010, I think it was. And so I've been doing this ever since. I initially started helping people with fears and phobias because that had been my journey. And the more I've looked into it, the more I've helped people, the more I've kind of developed this whole mindset mastery approach to helping people to conquer those blocks that are holding them back. Basically, the sorts of things that it would have been awesome if I'd found 30 years earlier. I would have had a very different career. But that's how I got into what I do now, purely by chance. And the really cool thing is, remember I said when I was young, I wanted to either be a hypnotist. Well, I'm not a hypnotist. I train other people to be hypnotists. Or I wanted to be an author. I've written and published books. Or I wanted to be a performer. I do sometimes do hypnosis, magic stage shows, just because it's fun. It's more like a hobby and just a fun outlet. And I also take part in local theatre from time to time as well. So, okay, to do all the three things I wanted to be when I was growing up, purely by chance. But it's amazing how once we get rid of those things which we've allowed ourselves to believe can stop us from achieving what we want to achieve, once we get rid of those, once we change them and realize the truth that we can be, do and have what we most want, it's amazing how it kind of falls into place at that point. We should take those out. And that's why I love helping people, because seeing them remove that blockage that they've had and seeing them really go for it and just being so happy that they can do what they've always wanted to do.
You know, and I love that. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. But first, I want to thank our sponsor. As you guys know, I'm a 9th grade dropout, but I've read over 6,000 books. And I always wanted to become an author, but everybody would say, well, you didn't even finish high school, so how can you write a book? Our book, it's called A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light, actually hit #1 twice on Amazon in the addiction and recovery circles. So if you guys are actually looking to find an amazing book that teaches you about addiction, recovery, but it also talks, the last 2 chapters are, what does depression look like? It's not what you think it looks like. And the last chapter is, what does addiction look like? It's not what you think it looks like. So it's also a teaching book. But the best part of it is 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with PTSD and homelessness. So I don't make any money off of it. So if you guys are interested in checking out the book, write book down below. Also, if you guys are interested in having your own show, StreamYard is sponsoring today's show. They're actually going to throw you some cash to start your own show. So you can't lose by doing that. So I just want to thank our sponsors. Without you guys, I couldn't do it. So my question is, now we're going to talk about,
just before you ask your question, I've got a quick question for you, Richard. What was the name of your book? I didn't catch that.
Oh, it's called A Hero's Journey. From Darkness to Light. From darkness to light. Awesome. But now, a lot of people, when we're talking about NLP, I find that some of the top performers, whether it's sports, whether it's being an athlete, whether it's being an author, performer, they go somewhere different when they're on the field, when they're on the stage. They become somebody different. Like for me, I know at home, I'm quiet, I'm reserved, but you get me on the stage, you get me in front of people, I'm animated, I can go to another level. I go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think, and I guess it's all part of the compartmentalizing. So talk to us about, reprogramming your brain instead of saying, well, you don't know how to talk to people. You can actually reprogram using NLP, and I want you to break that down for us. You can actually reprogram your mind into the way you talk about things. So break down NLP a little bit for the simple people like me.
Not a problem. So NLP, it stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Let's face it, you've got to have fancy names for things, right? So it's a Neuro-Linguistic Programming, NLP, and it was created by Richard Bandler and John Grinder back in the 70s. They first created it. What they started with, and often people think they have an idea of what NLP is, but what they're actually looking at are the tools which NLP has been used to create. NLP originally started with basically them asking questions. How do the best people, how do the people who are at the top of their profession, how do they do what they do? Like the top marksman, how do they do it? Because obviously they must do things differently from mediocre marksmen. What is it? How do they do that? And it was breaking it down. So NLP, they started off sort of modeling how people work, how people do things. It's kind of like if you had a gorgeous cake. You think, well, how do you do that? The best way to find out is go to the baker who created that cake and ask them, so how do you create it? What do you do? What are all the things that you have to do? What are the steps you have to do them in? You then create a recipe, you follow that same recipe, and you get, well, not quite the same cake, but you get something close to it. Because obviously you need your skill as well to really get it to work. But it's having that recipe would let you go well on the way to creating it. And that's what NLP let them do, is come up with the recipe for how these performers were at the top of their game. And from this, they also studied the likes of Virginia Satir, Milton Erickson, various people who were right at the top of their game in the field of helping people. Family therapy, Milton Erickson, the famous American hypnotherapist, he pretty much single-handedly got hypnosis turned from being like a sideshow, freak show thing to being an accepted part of medical practice. And they studied how these people did their stuff, worked out how they did it, modeled it all, and from that, we got a huge suite of tools, which are now what most people think of when they talk about NLP. We've got these recipes for how to work with the mind, how to work with people, how to help people make change deep at the unconscious level. And that's what NLP is these days. It's basically, think of it as just a big toolkit of tools and techniques you can use to help people reprogram the mind. So how on earth can we reprogram the mind? The mind, we've got, you can think of it as two components of the mind. We've got the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. The conscious, that's the part that's your awareness, for want of a better word. You're aware of when you're thinking great thoughts, when you're thinking about things and you're aware that you're thinking about them, or you're aware you're doing things. That's your conscious. That's your conscious mind. Underneath that, we've got the bulk of our mind, which is the unconscious mind. And that kind of runs everything. Because when we're walking, we don't think about moving all the muscle groups and think about balancing. Our unconscious knows how to walk. It lets us walk. It helps us to walk. Same when we do anything. We kind of do it almost on autopilot, as it were. And that's our unconscious running it. Now, our unconscious has sets of rules, instructions, programs, whatever you want to call it. When you need to walk, it runs this program that's all about how to walk, because it doesn't work things out from first principles each time. That would get really tiresome. If you had to learn to walk every morning when you got up, we'd never get anywhere. So it's got all these rule books, or you could think of it as software on your computer, or programs, whatever you want to call it, which is kind of built up as it's learned as we've been going through life. And sometimes we learn things in a really efficient way. Sometimes we may learn things in an inefficient or ineffective or even unhelpful way. Excuse me. We might learn that when we see a spider, we should freak out, because that's what our parent did when we saw them when we were a toddler. They did it every time. So we know when I see a spider, I freak out. We've just learned how to have a spider phobia, which is not the most helpful response to a spider. But every time we see a spider, our unconscious mind goes, well, oh yeah, that's what we do. Freak out, panic, scream. Okay, we can do that. When with things like NLP and all that with hypnosis, what you do is you're actually reprogramming the unconscious mind. You're changing the rule book, as it were, upgrading the software, whatever you want to call it, changing the associations that it has, changing the rules and the instructions on how to react. So that next time, instead of seeing a spider and freaking out, you might see a spider and go, oh, spider, and carry on with your day. How on earth can we do this? Why does it even work? One of the really important things is to do with the way memory works. Here's a little interesting nugget for you. You might find it interesting. Some people find it scary when they first discover this. When you remember something, you're not actually remembering it. So if you think back to a favorite holiday that you had, a favorite vacation you had, for example, and you remember that vacation, you remember the bits you really enjoyed about that, you're not actually remembering that vacation. What you're remembering is the last time that you remembered that vacation. Because the act of remembering a memory actually destroys that memory. The way memories are all stored in our mind, it's the chemicals, the electron charge, all that sort of thing in there. In order to get that memory, it basically destroys that charge. It's like if you have a piece of cake, in order to taste it, you have to eat it, at which point you've destroyed that piece of cake. So when we remember something, we destroy the memory, which is a bit of a problem. Fortunately, our brain has a great way to handle this. It records us remembering the memory. So when you remembered your vacation this time, your brain recorded you remembering that vacation. So next time you want to remember it, it will play back that recording of you remembering the last time you remembered it. So that's how we keep memories going on. We keep them going on, which is brilliant. Problem is, when we do that, if there's things of significance going on at the same time as we're remembering that thing and creating a new version of that memory, sometimes those also seep into it. It would be as if you're at the movies, you're watching the film by recording it on your camcorder or your phone or whatever. Somebody in front of you gets up and walks past. You see them walking past. They're now part of the movie. So next time you play it back, you see this audience person walking past. So when we record the memory of us remembering the memory, as it were, if the significant things happening at that time, they also kind of seep into that new recording.
You know, and I kind of agree, because I remember, like, when I was coming up, I'll be 54 coming up, but we used to listen to something called a record, and
I remember those.
and on one record that I listened to, it skipped at one part of a song. Now every time I listen to hear the song on the radio, I'm listening for the skip.
Listening for the skip, yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So our memory, each time we remember something, it destroys the memory. We record a memory of us remembering the memory, which means memories can change. Which is why in courts, eyewitness testimony is considered the least reliable form of testimony, because it's so easy for eyewitness testimony, for what people remember, it's so easy for that to get changed deliberately or accidentally. Asking questions in slightly the wrong way can cause somebody to remember what you've just suggested as being part of that memory. If a car had jumped the light, so what was it? A blue car that jumped that light? Yeah, it was blue, even though it might not have been, because the way you asked the question, they're now thinking, yeah, it was blue. Yeah, it was definitely a blue light. Then blue car. They're now definitely convinced it was a blue car that jumped the light, even though it might not have been. All of this is going somewhere. Trust me on this. So memory is fragile. Memory, every time we remember it, we destroy the memory. We create a new memory of us remembering the memory, which we can actually use to our advantage. And that's kind of what happens a lot of the times with things like hypnosis and NLP. In many of the ways it works, not always. There are lots of different tools, but one of the key things is taking that spider, for example. We see a spider, we freak out. We remember that we saw a spider and freaked out. So next time we see it, we remember seeing a spider. We remember we freak out, so we do the freak out and we record that. Our memory is that's what we need to do. if we think of a spider and at the same time think of something in a really absurd way that gets us just laughing out loud, and we repeat doing this over and over and over again in a very short period of time, what happens is the recording of the memory gets kind of scrambled. Because when we remember a memory, we don't just remember what we see, we remember what we hear, maybe what we smelled or tasted. We remember what we feel, the emotions. That's a key part of it as well. So if we do this and scramble what's going on and do this several times in a row, we reach the point where thinking of a spider brings that back a memory of something absurd and quite funny. So we see a spider and our mind just goes, we've now forgotten that we were supposed to be scared of it. We've forgotten that we do fear. We're now just going, oh, look, it's a spider. Oh, yeah, blancmange. Weird. And that old fear has now gone completely because the memory has been sufficiently changed. That's a really trivial example, but it kind of gets the overall concept. So same for any stuff that we have. A lot of things we have are beliefs. I'm not talking about spiritual or religious or moral beliefs. I'm talking about beliefs like, I could never do that. I mean, anytime I try to set up a business, it always fails. If we have that belief, that's because something happened at some point which taught us that belief. So that whenever we think about setting up a business, our mind replays that memory, or it replays the recording of us remembering that memory of us of what happened. And we go, yeah, we'll fail. If we can change the associations with that memory, change the emotions around it, change our feelings around it, next time we think about setting up a business, instead of thinking, yeah, there's no point, fail, we maybe get excitement, or maybe get, oh, actually, you know what, I'm feeling successful, because we've associated successful memories with it as well. So that has changed our limiting belief of, no, I could never run a business, to maybe I could.
Okay, so then I want to talk about that a second, because there was a time when, nobody believed that anybody could run a 4-minute mile. And then when Roger Bannister ran the 4-minute mile, within the next 2 weeks, hundreds of people were running the 4-minute mile just because somebody else did it. But I think nowadays, with this little box that we have that I'm talking in right now, everything should be wide open. Like if a lot of people say, well, I don't know any friends that are business. I don't know anybody that's a business owner. Well, for $15 a month, you can find out everything you wanted to know about Dale Carnegie or, any of these other people. If you just take the time and start studying, like you said, start studying what the people that are successful do, because success leaves clues. But like they say, you'll never see a turkey flying with an eagle. So yeah. sometimes you need to get away from the people that are around you and start hanging around or listening to people, because your brain doesn't know the difference whether they're there in person or not. But maybe you need to start upgrading your circle to start thinking like the successful people do, right?
Yeah, there's a few bits to unpack there. It's interesting you have the Sir Roger Bannister 4-minute mile example. That's something we hear a lot, and that's actually a great example of what I was talking about earlier about memory becoming corrupted. We so often hear that because we hear other people saying, oh, when no thought the 4-minute mile could be beaten, then Roger Bannister beat it, then within the next weeks, lots of people beat it. When you actually look at what happened, yes, people thought it wasn't possible. He beat the 4-minute mile. Others have done it, but it did take a lot longer. I can't remember how long it was now, but it was a reasonable amount of time before the next person did it. And it gradually more and more people did it. But over time, we've heard people say, oh yeah, lots of people did, lots of people. So we kind of remember that this kind of misattributed fact. The basics are still absolutely true. Prior to him running it, it was kind of thought, 4-minute mile? Ooh, can't be done. He did it. That changed people's mindset. They're going, oh, it can be done. And so more people were then pushing harder to be able to do it. Which is probably the most important part of that lesson, was the change of what one person thought, I can beat that 4-minute mile, going back to what we were talking about earlier about thought, and did what it took and was able to do it. And from that, other people were then going, oh, it is possible. Oh, let's also have a go. So more and more people then did what they needed to do and were over time able to start beating that. And as we know these days, a 4-minute mile is it's still a difficult thing to do, but it's much more commonplace in athletics. And yes, you're right. An eagle won't fly with turkey. We need to surround ourselves with the kind of people who have the sorts of mindset that enable them to do the kinds of things that we want to do, and also the sorts of people who have done the things that we want to do. It's cool if you can hang out with them physically and literally hang out with them and chat with them, which is why Warren Buffett, when he wanted to really study economics and finance and so on, he spent ages trying to get free internship with one particular person, kept turning him down. He kept on time and time again, kept badgering them until eventually they said, oh, right, oh, yes, okay, come on then. He then learned everything he could from them, and that's what turned him into, or what helped turn him into the financial wizard that he became, the investment wizard that he became, because he wanted to immerse himself in that field. And it's great if you can do that in person. But as you say, even if you can't, there are so many other ways you can do it. Books, I mean, you've mentioned Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Loads and loads of books around. We've got the internet. We can access so much of this stuff at low cost. So much is given away free. Absorb it, learn it. A key point, though, to remember is everyone is different. We're all different. What works for one person won't necessarily work for another. We're often, I hate this when you see them. You see someone saying, give me whatever money and I will give you my box-ticking blueprint of exactly how I built my business so that you can build yours. It's like, yes, it's great that you're giving me the exact steps you took, but if I just follow those exact steps, I'm going to create a successful business the way you did. In fact, if you were to start from nothing, start from scratch right now and follow those exact same steps, you wouldn't build the same kind of successful business as you built before, because things are different, the environment's different, everything's different. So we can't just follow the steps, cookie cutter approach, and get the results. However, what we can do is study it, learn deep, and learn it's not so important what are the steps that you took to create that business. What is much more important is, why did you take those steps? What happened that caused you to decide that was the best course of action to take? Because once you understand not what they did, but why they did it, what was the thought processes going on behind what they did that made them choose that path? Once you get that, then you have a much greater chance of success, because now you're not just following some directions they put on the map, you're learning how they navigated. So when that bridge is out, for example, you understand how to navigate and find a different way to cross that ravine. And as you say, it comes from surrounding yourself with like-minded people, reading the books from all these people, studying their autobiographies are also a great way to learn how they think, where they came from, what influenced them. So you can almost put yourself into that same mind, kind of step into mind. My investments are tanking. What would Warren Buffett do? Or you want to set up your business. I'm getting hammered from the competition of playing dirty tricks. What would Richard Branson do in this case? And that's where the true power comes in. Not necessarily following the steps, but digging deep and getting an understanding of why they chose to make those steps. What was the decision behind the decision? So that when you understand that process, you are then far better equipped to be able to handle whatever's coming up.
Yep. And but also back then, they talk about, how important masterminds are.
Mm.
They that was something he said, if it was one thing that really hit them on the map in the early 1900s, the most successful people, whether it was steel, coal, whatever it was, they had masterminds.
Mm. Oh,
and,
yeah.
and I think I have a mastermind that I'm part of once a week. We all meet. We're all business owners. We're all veterans. But I think if I didn't have a mastermind, I wouldn't be where I'm at today, because sometimes you just need to you can hear the same thing from 5 different people, and then the one person says something different, and it finally clicks, and you're like, yeah, I get it. But
Absolutely.
A lot of people, they don't want to invest in time. They don't want to invest in books. They think, success is I take a magical pill and then where you invest in, I said, if you want to be great at any one thing, you have to put 10,000 hours in.
Mm.
But I think also, besides books, I think masterminds are so important. What are your thoughts?
I couldn't agree more. Masterminds, when you get a good mastermind with a good team in the mastermind, it is so powerful, because suppose you've got a mastermind group of say 6 people. Now, instead of just you trying to figure out the problem, you've got 6 brains all looking at it from different angles, from their own perspectives, their own experiences, their own different ways of analyzing problems. You get a much greater chance to come up with solutions to problems. Also, when you're helping somebody else analyze their problems and come up with solutions for theirs, your mind doesn't go, oh, this is purely stuff that's relevant to Richard's business. Absolutely none of this is relevant to my business. I'll ignore it completely. You'll be going, hey, Richard, so you got this problem. Oh, we solved your problem. And at some point, your mind's going to go, ooh, hang on. I could do that with mine as well, So you get all that cross-pollination of ideas and strategies and approaches. And as you say, sometimes we need to hear the same thing several times before it sinks in. Not because we're ignoring it, but because each time we hear it, our mind is changing slightly. It's processing it slightly differently. It's building it up in layers until suddenly there's just enough to just tip us over. Sometimes you'll get that. I don't know if you've come across this. I know I have with friends. They've got a problem. They come to you with a problem, and you discuss and suggest a solution to them. They go, "Yeah, no, that couldn't work because da 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 da." You think, "Okay, on you go then." A few weeks later, they come back to you, and you go, "How are you getting on with that?" I solved it. I figured out what I have to do is ... And you're thinking, that's exactly what I told you had to do. But when you told them, their mind wasn't quite in the right place to be able to see how it all fit together. But it did get the cogs whirring until eventually they were going, now I see it. And they happen upon the same thing. That can happen with masterminds. It's the same with reading books. Don't just read one book on the topic. Read several different books, because you'll get different people's perspectives on it. Sometimes even reading the same book multiple times, not necessarily read it over and over and over again to the exclusion of everything else, but come back to that same book a few months or a year down the line. Because remember, we spoke very early on about change is constant. Situations are changing, we're changing, our mind's changing, everything that's going on is changing. When we read the book a second time, we're not the same person as we were when we read it the first time. Mm-hmm. We've got new perspective, new experience. Some of that stuff that we may have read first time, we picked up and has changed our perspectives on things, so that when we read it again, we're looking at it from a fresh perspective, and now something else jumps out. It's kind of like sometimes, you get a good film when you can watch that same film multiple times, and you always get something different out of it each time. You spot something you didn't see last time.
Okay, so now that's something I want to hit on real quick, because one thing I've become obsessed about is the reticular activating system in the brain.
Yeah.
Because I tell everybody, you can change your life, and at any moment. I mean, it's going to take a while, but you can change your life. And they say, well, how do you do? Your brain is kind of like your Facebook feed. If you go through your Facebook feed for 30 days and just put positive, heart everything that's positive, and let everything negative go, eventually all you're going to see is positive in your Facebook feed.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing in the mind. And I said,
Yep.
it's kind of like, oh man, I loved when I bought my Dodge Ram, my silver Dodge Ram truck. I loved it. But then when I drove it off the lot, everybody had a silver Dodge Ram.
Yeah.
A lot of it, because of the reticular activating system, a lot of it, when you start focusing on either success or failure, that's what you're going to find.
Yep. Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about the RAS.
Great. So, our mind is constantly bombarded with loads of information. I read one figure, they reckon 2 million bits of information every second coming in through all of our senses. Things we see, hear, feel, touch, taste, smell, all our other senses as well. Actually, here's one. How many senses do you think we have? People will usually say 5 senses. Sometimes they'll say, oh, we've got a 6th sense. Apparently, there's no definitive figure, but it's reckoned to be between about 12 and 20 senses. Things like sense of balance, we can sense temperature, sometimes some people can sense electric current. Things like when your bladder's full, we've got that sense. You've got, if you put your arm behind your back so you can't see it and you move it around, you still know exactly where your hand is. Proprioception. We've got all of these senses. And we're getting all this information is coming in, 2 million bits of information every second. Our poor old conscious mind can't cope with that amount of information. We're going to complete overload. We can only handle seven or so chunks of information at any one time. So what happens is we've got the part of our brain which filters all this information that's coming through. Is this information, is it relevant to us at the moment? If it's yes, it gets passed up. If not, it gets rejected. And what's relevant will change on a moment-to-moment basis. And we've got lots of these filters, things like our beliefs, our attitudes, our values. Those are things which are important to us. Also filtered through stuff like time. So something that happens now would have a higher importance than something that happened a while ago. Same with distance. Something that happens right close to us would have a higher chance of being relevant than something that was happening a million miles away. All of these different filters that filter all of this information, and what they're still sorting for and filtering for changes on a moment-to-moment basis depending upon what's important to us at that particular time. But they filter all of this stuff down so that we only get a tiny bit of what's going on, a tiny bit of that, and that's what's relevant to us at that point. And that's where our RAS kicks in. That's part of the whole filtering process. Is this thing important to us? If it is, we'll pass it on up the chain. If it's not, then we won't. And part of what decides what's important to us is what are we looking for? It's like your search engine. If you type famine into your search engine, you'll find millions of articles all about famine. And you might conclude, oh my word, there's no food for anyone in the world. This is awful. On the other hand, if you were to type in wealth into your search engine, you'll find millions of results on wealth. It's whatever you're searching for. And that's what our RAS does. It helps formulate what we're searching for, so that filters out things that aren't relevant. You gave a great example with the car there. That's always a go-to example with the RAS. You buy a car, all of a sudden everyone seems to have that exact make, model, and color. Obviously, they didn't all suddenly buy it, but yesterday that make, model, and color of car was irrelevant to you. Today, it's very relevant because it could be your car. And it's how you recognize your car. So you'll see any car that fits that make, model, and color. So you're like, is that mine? Oh, no, it's not mine. But suddenly you become aware of all of them. And it's the same with your RAS. If you're always thinking about negative stuff and how bad everything is and how everything you do goes wrong, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see lots of proof that what you do goes wrong. You're going to be looking for examples of when you fail. You're going to be looking for examples of when you attempt something and it went horribly wrong. However, if you have a more positive mindset and you're looking for success, including your own successes, you believe that, yeah, you know what? Yeah, sometimes I have failures, but I have a lot of successes as well. I do achieve things. I'm good at what I do. I get great success. When you truly believe that, your whole RAS is going to be filtering for examples to back up this belief that you succeed. And the reality is, throughout our day, we have things that go wrong, we have things that go right, because we're human. We can't be perfect. We can't get everything right all the time. Some things go wrong, some things go right. Whichever you happen to believe is what is your dominant one, that's what your RAS will filter for. So if you have this belief that everything I touch turns to dust, everything I do, sooner or later it fails, you'll be constantly seeing examples of when you failed at things. Your memory will be going, yeah, here's another load of memories where we failed. Oh, we suck. We're rubbish at this. If you believe, hey, you know what? I'm good. I'm successful. I'm great at helping people make a comeback. I'm great at helping people. I'm great at running my business, whatever. Your RAS will be keyed to that, and it will be bringing examples of, hey, look, here's where we helped Fred. Here's a record month that we've had in the business, and things are getting better day to day. Oh yeah, I am good at this. So it's what we focus on tends to be what we will see more of, and that will then tend to guide what we get, because we see whatever we're looking for, we see more of that. That then informs our thoughts, and as we said earlier on, what we think about triggers our actions. So if we think about everything I do is rubbish, obviously we're going to go on a downward spiral. If we think, hey, you know what, I'm good at this. I'm a successful entrepreneur. We're going to see examples of success. We're going to see more opportunities. We're going to see more opportunities where we could do something and that could lead to success and give us a great result, and we're then going to jump for it. So,
all right, now, last couple questions. So give us 3 actionable steps that we can take today and within in the coming future to switch our minds to success instead of failure.
Right. First thing I would suggest is get yourself a pen and a notepad, and have it beside your bed. Last thing at night, just before you switch the light off and go to sleep, look back over your day and write down 5 things which went well. 5 examples from the day where you were successful. And they don't have to be massive. They don't have to be secured $1 million deal. It could be, hey, I cooked a blooming good dinner tonight. The family loved it. 5 examples of when you did things successfully. That every day for a month. Make them different each day. So don't write down the same 5 things every day. Come up with 5 different things each day over the course of the month. Because what's happening there is you're starting to force yourself to look for examples of success that you create. We're starting to train our RAS to look for successful things, because after a few days, our mind is going to be going, I'm going to be thinking of 5 good things. Hey, here's something that was successful. We'll remember that one. So we're starting to train our mind to look for success. Do this over your 30 days. Your mind is going to be much more receptive to looking for successful things. You'll see some things that went wrong. Yeah, that's right, but with this worked. So we're starting to train that RAS. Also, what it can do is if you're having a really bad day, you can flick through your notebook and go, actually, you know what? Yeah, okay, I had a bad day today, but look, here's 50 things I've done over the past couple of weeks. That would be the biggest thing. Another one that we can do, this is a bit more self-reflection, is ask yourself, where do I want to be? Where do I want to be? And write it down in as much detail, write all the figures. I mean, it could be your business. Where do I want my business to be? What turnover do I want? What profit do I want to have? Write all of this down. Then write down your current situation, your current figures. So you've now got where you want to be, you've got where you are. Look at what the gap is, what's the difference between where you want to be and where you are. Then ask yourself, what do I need to do to get from where I am to where I want to be? Chances are, well, sometimes you go, oh, actually, yes, I see now. So sometimes even just doing this can trigger us to go, oh, I need to do this, this, and this. Often people will go, well, I don't know. I don't know what I need to do, because if I knew, I'd be doing it. I don't know. Cool. So you don't know what you need to do. How could you find out what you need to do? So this is now getting us to figure out what we need to do to get to where we want to go. And if you're still at that point thinking, well, I don't know, then you're getting close to uncovering a fear that's really holding you back. And the reason I say it's a fear is we know exactly how to find out what we need to do. We ask our peers. We check on the internet. We read books. We know exactly how to find out what we need to do. So the question to ask yourself, if you're pretending that you don't know what you need to do to find out what you need to do, if you're pretending not to know, ask yourself this: what am I scared of? Why is it that I'm pretending that I don't know how to find out what I need to know? I can sometimes get quite uncomfortable thinking that, because we don't like to think that we're scared of things. Particularly the more successful we are, the less we like to think that things are holding us back. But also, you could be about to uncover a deep-seated fear that you've got. But ask yourself, what? And a good way to ask is, what am I pretending not to know in order to think that I can't figure this out?
So now the books that you have, do they cover these things that we're talking about?
In various ways, yeah. I mean, I've got 5 books out at the moment. 4 of them are books that where I brought various experts together, coached them all through writing a chapter. They're about 6,000 to 10,000 word chapters, so they're about the length of a keynote each. And we themed the book. The 4 books in that series are all in the Winning in Life and Work series, and we got ones about new beginnings, all about how to start over again. We got one called Success Secrets, which was various people, including an Olympian, sharing their secrets of how to create success. We got one called Dare to Dream, which was how people went about actually daring to have big dreams and then make them come true. So those each of the stories in there are inspirational in their own right. And when you read several different ones, they kind of all cross-pollinate, just like the mastermind group cross-pollinates. And then the 5th book I did, the last one, it's a solo book called The Masks We Wear, which is all about the metaphorical masks that we wear in life. We wear them because we kind of want to hide away so that people won't dislike us, basically, is why we wear them, because we don't want people to dislike us. But by hiding behind these masks, we stop people who really do like what we stand for. We stop them ever getting a chance to connect with us. So it explores where all these masks come from and how we can go about removing those masks. And in some cases, holding ourselves back in business is part of the mask. We don't want to be seen as one of those successful people who's got ideas above their station. Who do they think they are? They've lost touch with their roots. So we hide behind these masks. And we're not really very successful at creating a business because we don't want to be perceived as one of these people who's dared to stand up and be successful. Once we remove these masks, so that we're able to say, you know what, this is me. This is who I am. If you don't like it, no problem. You hang out with the people you do like. I'm going to hang out with the people who like me. Because this is me, it's who I am, and I'm just going to be you, just be you. And it's all cool.
So then we know we talked earlier, you got a new book about to drop in March. So how do we find you? How do we find your books? How can we get in touch with you and support your mission?
Thank you so much for asking. Good way to find out more about any of these aspects is go to my website, which is keithblakemore-noble.com. No spaces, no hyphens, just keithblakemore-noble.com. And you'll find the books, you'll find the stuff that I do, you find blogs, you find the podcast and everything there. Or search on the socials or search on your favorite search engine for Keith Blakemore-Noble. I am blessed with having a unique name. Nobody else on the planet has got this name. So whatever you find on there, good or bad, it's me.
I love it, brother. Brother, I'm so grateful that we finally got that. I know we played email tag for a while.
Yeah, we did.
But I'm so grateful that we finally got to hang out, and I truly appreciate everything you're doing, and I think you're creating a great service. And I can't wait for that new book to drop, because I'm the kind of guy, I want to know why certain things are. I want to know how people are selling me. I want to know how I get sold. And I think part of your new book is talking about that a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's called Anti-Manipulation, and it's sharing the tools, tricks, and techniques which the unscrupulous use to manipulate us into buying their products, their services, their courses, or their ideas. So yeah, it's all about how they manipulate us into buying.
So then, if you're a guy like me, I'm always thinking, well, if I buy that book, because like if you buy a book like by Mr. Robert Cialdini, and talking about influence, or if they buy your new book coming up, if they really wanted to, they could just reverse engineer everything that you're talking about and become right.
Become master manipulators. When I said about first writing the book, that was a concern. I was like, I don't want to write the handbook on how to become a manipulator. The way the book, with a lot of the tools that they use to manipulate us, knowing how to recognize the tool being used is different from being able to master how to use the tool, if that makes sense. So it's, you could, I suppose, get the book, learn all these things, and then go out and research how to implement these tools. But you know what? If they're going to do that, they're going to do that anyway. However, by having the book out there in the hands of many people as possible, we can all read it. We can all see how these tricks, tools, and techniques work. We can learn how to spot them so that we can be aware that they're being used, so that we can make sure when we buy something, we buy it because we want to and not because they want us to buy it. So even if somebody did take the book and use that as a springboard to go and learn how to manipulate, they're going to have to go through a lot to learn it. Meanwhile,
I want to be the first person to purchase it. I want to be the first person to buy it. Hopefully, get an autographed copy. But so I just want to say thank you. I want to thank our sponsors, guys. Remember, if you love reading like I do, pick out my book, A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light. If you're interested in reading, to learn a little bit about me, but also help me save some lives. If you want to start your own show, check out StreamYard. They're going to throw you some free cash just for checking it out. And guys, like my T-shirt says, today I decide. Those are the three most important words in the English language, because you get to decide whether to be a victor or a victim. So today is your day to be a victor and not the victim. Brother Keith, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much. And I'm blessed to finally call you friend.
Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to when you come over to this side of the pond. We're going to go and catch that dinner.
I'm all about it, brother. All right, guys, remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is but up. And I will catch you guys tomorrow. Love you guys. Keith, have an amazing day.
You too, Richard. Thank you so much.